Okay, so welcome to our virtual open week and today's session, Leading Innovative Growth with Dr. Ian Kierans. My name is Suzanne Brady and I work on the business development team here at Smurfit Executive Development. Before we start, I'm just going to introduce you a little bit to our school for anyone who may not be familiar with us before. I'll just get you to move along the slides there, Ian. So UCD Smurfit Executive Development is part of the wider UCD Michael Smurfit Graduate Business School. Now, we're very pleased to have recently been named as the #1 provider of open enrollment executive education in Ireland, as well as being ranked in the top 10 schools in the UK and Ireland, according to the 2026 Financial Times Executive Education Rankings. In addition to our rankings, the school enjoys the Triple Crown of accreditation and is also a member of a global network of alliances. And all of this is both testament to and contributes to the high quality learning experience you can expect from us here at Smurfit. So in today's webinar, we're delighted to explore one of our new short executive programs, Leading Innovative Growth, with Dr. Ian Kierans. Just to let you know that this webinar will be recorded and we will share the recording as well as program information after the session. If you have any questions, please pop them in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. And with that, I'm delighted to hand over to Dr. Ian Kierans, Program Director of Leading Innovative Growth.
Thanks very much, Suzanne, and delighted to talk to you all today around leading innovative growth. Just a little bit about myself, which is I spent the last 30 years understanding and helping established organizations to grow. And in that time, about 20% of my time is dedicated to research, writing, and teaching. But the other 80% of my time is actually working with real leadership teams on real growth challenges in established organizations. And myself and my colleagues have worked with over 100 different companies at this point across Europe and in the US. And about 50% of the companies I work with would be multinational subsidiaries. So they're not standalone independent businesses. They may be a key part of the corporate value chain, a key function or several functions combined together. About 40% would be independent companies, whether they're SMEs or large enterprises, and about 10% would be public sector. So the work that we're kind of going to get into really applies to any one of those type of companies. The main thing is the focus is on established companies as opposed to startups or entrepreneurial ventures. And what I want to get into is just a little bit about why innovative growth matters now more than ever. And I'm going to use an illustrative case to do that of an independent company. What kind of happens? What are the dynamics at play? And where innovative growth can really create a new growth cycle for any particular business or any organization or any function within a business. Then I want to talk about the growth system itself. What is it, that can actually achieve that, which is by and large, excuse me, what we would cover on the actual program. And then I'll talk about how the program would work in terms of the learning journey, and then we'll allow some time for Q&A at the end. So the illustrative case that I'm going to show you here is, it's not a single company, it's a composite teaching case based on several nutrition and food companies we've worked with over the past 15 years in Europe. So what's more important about it as an illustrative case is these are the patterns that we see all the time when it comes to innovative growth. So we'll call this company Nutrico, set up in Switzerland in 1990. And its original focus was that they spotted an opportunity in the market. And the opportunity was more and more people who wanted kind of cleaner food products that were healthier, better for them, part of their kind of well-being regime, and that they may have had certain issues around, wanting to be more fitness, less ultra-processed food, digestion, sleep, whatever the case may be. And in the beginning, the founders and the original team were very close to the consumer. And they kind of really got to know that this body of people had neglected needs out there. And they combined that understanding of there's a need out there in the market with what they needed, which is food science and commercial and so forth. And I'm just going to check chat here. Okay, that there was nothing going on kind of technically there. But so they got out there, they created some products, initially working with externals in food science, bringing that in-house, and they created a number of products and they did a number of hits. So they moved from what you might call the startup phase, which we call the white space, which is an awful lot of unknowns, and they were successful in finding product market fit, problem solution fit. They solved something, which then moved them into kind of the 2000s after 10 years, where they're starting to scale. And this is where they kind of built a business and a business model to drive the business for growth, for internationalization, more markets across Europe, and they even got into North America and the US. And the third phase they got into here, you see the revenues on the left-hand side, and you see the margin in this picture here, is success. And this is where they're growing at a very high rate, 2010 up to 2015, very successful. Now, as sure as day follows night, when you create a market because of innovations, others will follow. Competition will catch up. And some signs are there's a lot of consolidation in the market. People are buying up other players for market share. And big players come in with their own versions of products, learn from you and others, and the competition intensifies significantly. Now, this company then begins to stall. Growth begins to run out in this particular situation. So, they could stall, they could face into decline. And this is where typically companies then realize, we need to look at innovation. And in this kind of composite case, at point A, around 2023, when we published this case, the focus is on, do we have what it takes to achieve our desired growth, which is about 15% growth a year. You see it there, point B, which effectively would double the business in about 5 years. And the answer was, well, we're stalling, so we don't. We need to renew growth. Now, when we apply an innovation lens to this, so on the right-hand side is the percentage of growth, meaning the percentage of revenue that comes from innovation. What we see is in the white space, it's all innovation. Backs to the wall, this is going to work. We're different in the marketplace, whether local or international market, our offerings are different, or even within the corporation, we're different compared to sister sites. But over time, as success occurs, the focus on innovation slows down. And this is called kind of innovation atrophy. The big goal is on optimization, getting the rewards, getting our bonuses, driving profitable growth, as to really focusing on what's coming down the track in the future and moving beyond incremental innovation. So at this point in time, the focus to go for renewal means we have to not only look at incremental innovation in the black space, our core business, we also need to look at, is there opportunities to scale, move into adjacencies, and what's going to happen further down the track in the white space. So it's kind of almost this mix of things that have come before, but appropriate for us now to renew and grow going into the future. And in order to do that, yes, you can do mergers and acquisitions. Yes, you can do pricing and promotion, but innovation, time and time again, is shown as one of the greatest pathways to growth. And it even supports mergers and acquisitions. So you need a capability to do that. And that's what you're going to get on this program. How do we build our growth system? How do we build our growth capability? And there's a survey done by the Boston Consultancy Group in 2024. And what it has shown is that in the last 3 years, or rather 2022 to 2024, over 1,000 executives who were part of the study said innovation is a top 3 goal in their business, meaning for their business strategy to grow, innovation is a top 3 priority. And this has been increasing over the years. However, when they assess their readiness, meaning their capability to achieve that level of growth, there is a huge gap. And it's fallen down more and more over the years. And a large part of that to do is the level of change that's coming in around AI and other technologies. There's an anxiety out there in the market. Here's a new technology. We've been hearing about it, but now we're seeing it. Now we're feeling it. It's impacting our business, and we don't know how to really get the most out of it just yet. And this is a very prevalent problem across companies. It's a universal problem at the moment right now. So, the key here is that most companies want innovative growth, but don't feel they're ready enough to get what they want to achieve the level of growth that they want to achieve. So, as I say, you need a system. And this is, as I said, very much what the focus of the program is going to be about, but apply to your context. We'll talk about how the program works in a few minutes, but it very much is about you building your growth system. So typically companies have a lot of ideas on the left, and what we want to get to on the right is the outcomes, the results, new products, new services, new processes as an independent business, or better processes internally in the corporate value chain, adapted business models, innovative business models, irrespective of whether you're a subsidiary or a standalone business. So we want to get from point A to point B. We need to build this capability. And the pentathlon has been built up over 30 years, proven, updated with cutting edge research, and applied to numerous companies. And it's got 5 parts, as the metaphor implies. You can't just be good at one part, you need to be good at all 5 to get the rewards out of it. Number 1 is shape an innovation strategy. And what the focus here is that innovation must be tied to business growth. You've got to get the top team on board. You've got to get the stakeholders bought in. So when we see we want to double the business, for example, in 5 years, what's the percentage of innovation that's going to deliver that? That gets people's attention, that gets people's focus. Again, standalone or whatever subsidiary metric is, we've got to tie it to that mission critical thing. That allows us to say, well, what's the ratio, the mix of core innovation versus launching new things, trying out new things, versus having a sense of what's coming down the track, down the road. So innovation strategy, commercial goal, but then it's into looking around out there in the market and where we should innovate and how we're going to win, what capabilities are going to require. So that allows us to put focus on moving away from just ideas and ideation, but focused ideas that suit our innovation strategy tied to our business strategy. One of the big problems and the big traps here oftentimes is that senior teams focus too near term and too narrow. So we expand the lens, we expand the time frame, but then we bring it back into focus. We can't do everything. The second part of the pentathlon is, well, are we set up? Are we organized in order to deliver a renewed a degree of innovation, a higher level of performance in the innovation space? This is not about creating the perfect organization. This is about making sure we're set up to build this capability and get going. So in the beginning, it's about, have we got a budget, at least to develop out the opportunities that we want to move forward with and to have a better understanding of them. Can we assign some teams to those people? Can we be a bit more careful about who we pick to be on those teams? Very often the people who are excellent at what they do today need support to think about mid, long-term innovations. And even they need support to look at their core business through fresh lenses, fresh eyes. I was with a client the other day and they were saying about, we want to make this improvement of onboarding and we want to improve it by 30 seconds. But then what, we began to look at was, well, how do you actually improve it by 3 or 4 minutes, a lot more breakthrough thinking. And that requires new processes, new tools, and kind of helping people to think that way and not expecting them to innovate on the Friday afternoon at the side of the desk. What's going to be the next big breakthrough? It just doesn't work like that. So are we organized enough to start executing our innovation strategy? Then we get into really what often people think of innovation is, which is the ideas. But the myth here is it's great ideas lead to great innovations. It's great insights that lead to great innovations. How do we help you see what others don't in the market? You want to get an advantage, not just what people are saying, give me this faster, give it to me better, give it to me cheaper if you're B2B services or even in product markets, but also it would be how can we sorry, I got caught looking at the chat there. How do we see what they're not saying, what they're feeling, the frustrations, the unspoken, and they're not widely publicly known? So there's a big focus on getting deep, new, novel insights. The fourth part of the pentathlon is, well, we've got to pick projects. We can't do everything. We've only got limited time, budget, resources. So how do we pick a portfolio that's more winning than not? And the 2 things to watch out for here is you need dual mechanisms. So net present value and ROI are very appropriate for black space incremental innovation projects, whereas we need a different mechanism for gray and white. We want to be able to compare these apples and oranges collectively into one portfolio. The second thing you want to focus on here is how do we make sure the leadership team Pet projects, biases, and opinions are pushed away to focus on what's really strategically important and what's going to drive the level of growth that we've set out in our innovation strategy in phase one. Phase five is getting to market and getting market adoption. So there's two parts to this. And the 2 points that I would make that we focus on here is that certain projects, we've got to make sure we have the right vehicle, process, team, tools set up to drive black space innovations. We've also got to allow for more agile, more sprints, more scrums, for more gray and white space innovations. So different vehicles for different projects. How do we set them up to get them to market faster? Ultimately, innovation is a learning game. We want to learn faster than others. We want to de-risk innovation. Phase five is when it gets more expensive. You start building out, hiring people, building capability, kit, technology, whatever it may be, code. So you really want to kind of learn and de-risk this phase. But you also need to think about, especially if it's a gray and white space innovation, moving into a new market, a new adjacency, bringing something out there that isn't out there before. You've got to develop and build that market, drive market adoption. So this is the system, and this is what we will teach over the program. And we won't just teach it. We're going to actually bring it to life with first-hand cases. So we have a book on this topic. It was released in 2023. There's 24 unique cases and lots of other first-hand cases that we worked on directly here. And a number of these companies will come in also as guest speakers at different parts of the pentathlon, talking about their experience, what worked for them, what were the watch outs, what were the learnings from them. So it's going to be first-hand cases, first-hand guest speakers, and very much the focus is to teach, keep it short, keep it tight, focus on the mechanisms, i.e. the tools and the practices, but also the mindsets. Having the tools and the mechanisms without, recognizing the different people who are involved, from those who hold the budget to those who are involved, to those who you need to work with externally in an organization, is a recipe for disaster. So mechanisms without mindsets is just bureaucracy. And then, allowing just kind of creative mindsets without some tools and mechanisms leads to wishful thinking. So we focus on both. We'll teach that, but critically, we'll get you to apply it to your organization. That is the really key part about this. It's applied. So we want to have, we're going to have several different companies in this program. And while the bulk of it is a 3-day in-person program, basically, if you think about it, there's 5 parts. So 5 half days and topping and tailing and guest speakers over the 3 days. But to get going fast in advance, we have a confidential diagnostic, and that will focus on, your company as a percentage. We're not looking for, information you don't want to share widely, but it will be confidential. Just the percentage of growth over time, the current capability to achieve that growth. Do you think there's enough opportunities in process to deliver that level of growth for the organization? You saw that in the case where they were stalling. There was a lot of renewing that needed to be done, and innovation was a huge part of that. So understanding your kind of A to B, but also assessing your current innovation capability. You may be in an innovation role, you may be moving to an innovation role, or for the vast majority of people that I work with, they're in a functional or some divisional role where they have to deliver more growth, whether it's manufacturing, supply, whether it's in technology, whether it's in marketing. They'll have to work with other parts of the organization to achieve this. So developing this growth system is very relevant for multiple roles in the organization. The key is you have to deliver a level of new growth. So we would apply it then. We'll have a kickoff webinar after the diagnostic to get to know each other, to get going, to get some of the basics laid down. And then we'll have 3 in-days, the 19th, the 20th, and 21st of October, to work through the journey of building your innovative growth system. And as I said, we'll have guest speakers there, but it's going to be teach, apply, teach, apply. So I'm going to pause at this point. I think I know I went through that quite fast, so you may have a number of questions at this point. But I'll pause and hand over to Kathy for some Q&As. I suppose I'll leave you just to say, ultimately, what will you get? A clearer growth framework. But really, I want you to take it from a framework that you've just seen there into here's our set of tools tied to our growth objectives. We have a better sense of where we're going to operate in, or at least know how we're going to do that by working with others when we go back into the organization, how to build out that framework. Ultimately, you'll be in a position to develop a sharper portfolio based on better, deeper insights, more objective choices tied to your strategy, very much a focus on commercial results, whether it's new products, whether it's processes, whether it's adapting business models, whether it's, as for many of you, will be how do we win with AI and other technologies that are out there right now that we have to bring into the fold. And it's going to have a systemic impact on the rest of the organization. Key thing is you'll be leaving with greater clarity and confidence. So look, there's a couple of testimonials there from people who've been on recent programs. And I'll hand over back to you, Suzanne, for some Q&A.
Great. Thank you so much, Ian. That was very informative and exciting. We do have a couple of questions that you may sort of expand a little bit just on some of the points you covered. One really was sort of what is the profile or the persona perhaps that is this program is ideally aimed at? I know you mentioned a few roles there briefly at the end.
Yeah. And I think, I'd be want to make clear that this is really for any leader in any organization who's really responsible for driving growth and recognizing that that growth can't all just happen in their function. So they've got to work with others. So, innovation roles about 10, 15 years ago became very popular. There was a lot of chief innovation officers and chief growth officers and hybrid roles. It's not necessarily targeted just for those at all. It's really, as I say, broader roles, broader functions. For example, we worked with Diageo Beer Supply. Innovation was not typically within their remit. They were kind of asked to create products. And we ran a program with them, which created a whole raft of opportunities within the Diageo Corporation to drive beer. And that was really from the supply folks. Jazz Pharmaceuticals is another company I'm working with. Again, it's technical operations in that organization that are looking at building out this particular system. It may be a senior leader in a smaller business, in sales, in marketing, that want to do it. So really, it's quite broad. As I said, the key is really around we've got a growth agenda. We want to deliver on that more effectively, more efficiently, and we want to build out a system that's going to help us to do that.
Great. And then is there another aspect? It's probably quite an intense 3 days. Obviously, there's a short, high impact program. I'm just wondering, do participants get an opportunity to practice or apply skills learned during the 3 days?
Yeah, so no, it's a great question, and very much we kind of want to hit the ground running at the 3 intense days. So in advance, I'll be looking at the diagnosis that we've done. I'll be looking, in the kickoff of kind of the problems they face because different people will have different strengths and weaknesses in their system and their capabilities. So we'll be touching it back to their needs. But as I said, we would want approximately 40% of the time where you're actually, I learn, we discuss, but I apply, and whether it's 40 or 30 in my own particular company and sharing and learning from other peers. But very much we want it to be applied to their particular situation so they can kind of take this back and run with it.
Great. I think that's all for today. That was really informative. Thank you so much for sharing all that information on the program with us. Just a reminder to everyone that we are going to share this recording with all registrants, as well as a reminder of the program information after the session. So just that leaves me with saying thank you, Ian, and thank you to everyone for joining us. And we hope that we can welcome some of you on campus here in October. Thank you. Bye now.
Thank you, Suzanne. Bye bye.
Bye.